going to call the meeting of the Senate Finance and Appropriations to order. Good morning, everyone. I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
You have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next, I will turn to our agenda and ask April to briefly describe Senate Bill 6012, my bill, Senate Bill 6012.
Madam Chair, I would ask the clerks to put up there's a slide. If they could move to the next slide, and hopefully that will adjust instead of being scrambled. It is posted to our website for those in the audience, there we go, just in case you're having trouble reviewing that as well. But just quickly, Madam Chair, here is what the summary of what your bill does. It eliminates the new language that was included in Chapter 2, which was the biennial budget that was adopted on May 13th, related to the Virginia Military Survivors and Dependents Education Program, or VMSDEP, and the other waivers and related stipend. For those who want to look at the bill, that is on lines 383 through 408. The second thing it does is provide a contingent appropriation for an additional $90 million, or up to $90 million, which would be up to $45 additional million per year, and that would be from the anticipated fiscal year 2024 surplus, which the books of the Commonwealth are still being closed out. But we know that there will be money there for that, and that will go to support the VMSDEP tuition and fee waivers. Taken into account with the amounts that were also included in Chapter 2, which got adopted in May of the $20 million per year, that would provide a total of up to $65 million per year for each fiscal year of this biennium, so fiscal year 2025 and fiscal year 2026. And those, if you want to look in the bill, it's lines 224 through 233. And again, just to reference why the $65 million is the known cost, the last year where there are actuals. And so that is, and not a debate on whether or not people feel that's accurate or not. There will be a JLARC study, but the $65 million is the last year of reported actuals. The next thing it does is it includes a technical adjustment to language under item 130, and that's where the current appropriation of the $20 million general fund per year exists. Because it referenced the language that is now being eliminated in Part 4, that's an adjustment to eliminate that reference. And that, if you want to follow along on that entire item is between lines 13 and 223 in the bill. Madam Chair, I also want to mention that it's identical to the House bill by Chair Torian of House Appropriations. It's House Bill 6004. And Madam Chair, that completes my presentation unless there are questions.
Thank you, April. I appreciate that. Now, before I take members' questions, I want to make a few brief remarks. I will start by reiterating the legislation before you fully repeals the changes to VMSDEP and the related tuition waivers. It will also provide an additional $90 million from the fiscal year 2024 surplus to offset the cost of the program. When added to the amount appropriated in the biennium budget, this will provide $65 million in each year of the biennium. This amount represents the most recent full cost of VMSDEP's waivers. In addition, both the House and Senate leadership previously directed JLARC to independently study VMSDEP, and that study will be completed in September. Along with the study, the allocation of $65 million each year gives me comfort that we will not place the burden of the escalating costs of this program on other students through their tuition charges. And, as I have said before, making higher education affordable for all students is a priority that should be shared by everyone. The JLARC study and our select work group on VMSDEP will provide us with the answers we need to ensure this program will be sustainable long-term to serve veterans and their families. Those are the reasons that I am comfortable with the repeal of the language at this time. Delegate Torian has an identical bill that should be coming from the House this afternoon. Now, I will ask if members have any questions.
Madam Chair, I don't have a question, but just a comment.
Senator McDougal.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As we've gone through this process, I think some of us have been advocating pretty strongly that we needed to be in a place where that our first responders and military families felt as if they had the opportunity to be heard and their views and voices presented before we made a decision. The legislation that we have in front of us now does that, and so this is what you've heard me and a number of others advocate for. So I'm glad that we're going to be able to move forward a reset, have the commissions, the groups to look and individuals express their thoughts and their positions, and then we can make a decision after all those voices have been heard.
Thank you, Senator McDougal. Any other questions from members of the committee?
Move to report.
Well, before I do that, though, I'd like to ask if there's anyone in the audience who would like to speak. And if so, I'll provide 5 minutes on each side. For those wishing to speak, you can line up.
Should I wait for my timer? Okay. I realize many of you are expecting a resounding victory speech. Instead, I'm no less worried about the future of VMSTEP than I was on May 13th. I believe this battle is far from over. Have you ever heard the phrase, fool me once, shame on you? Fool me twice, shame on me. Our government has already fooled us once. We, the citizens of Virginia, must commit to ensuring that this doesn't happen again. My main message to all Virginians is don't allow yourself to be fooled again. There's one thing that we should have learned from this entire fiasco, and that's we should demand a stop to the legislative loophole, aka legislating through the budget. My message to the governor, political appointees, and members of the General Assembly, as well as Virginia, is that Virginians are not stupid and have grown wise to these deceptive and continuously destructive antics, and we will continue to closely monitor, expose, and demand strict accountability for any elected representatives who continue to pursue any agenda intent on circumventing this process. No more sneaking conscientious or highly controversial legislation through the budget. Got it? Despite what many of you have been led to believe, I don't believe that today is an entire win. The only winners here are the so-called not-for-profit universities and what amounts to a massive cash payout for a temporary appease and or silencing to higher education's strong opposition to VMS-STEP. What will happen when the money dries up? What will happen during the next biennial budget? What if there are insufficient funds to draw from? Will public universities be compelled to provide accurate and transparent accounting, opening their books and submit to regular VMS-STEP audits? This represents a brief glimpse into the fight that will continue for months, if not years to come. Don't be fooled into believing that this is going to go away quickly. I can assure you that many of the same factions intent on destroying VMS-STEP very much are still entrenched on both sides, inside and outside of the government. More importantly, every indication suggests that work remains well underway behind closed doors on mobilizing a plan to reintroduce many of the same programmatic cuts during the next legislative session. In other words, there is a very high likelihood that we will be back here again in 2025 and 2026. The circumstances which led to this repeal was not a sudden realization of mistakes, a sudden change of heart, or an abundance of guilt or regret inflicted on thousands of Virginians. No, the unfortunate reality is that this issue was beginning to spill over into a highly contentious congressional races in the fall, and therefore resisting a full, clean, and repeal change were forced in order to act in their own political interests, loyalty to their party, not necessarily core principles or an attempt to right wrongdoing.
For this product presentation.
I'll close by suggesting that if our elected officials are genuinely committed to making this right, this is what needs to happen. 1, commit to an actual full transparency and accountability. No more closed-door meetings or withholding key documents and correspondences. Before doling out any taxpayer funds to public universities, first establish strict criteria for requesting reimbursements. 3, commit to the legislation that will forbid future legislating through the budget when it comes to any changes for any public benefit or assistance programs.
Madam Chair, may
Stop the
I
clock,
ask the
please.
witness a question, please? May I ask you a question? Would you prefer us not to pass this bill today? Is that what I'm hearing you saying?
I'd like for it to be passed today, but I don't think that it's the grandiose, I don't think it's a be all end all. That's my point.
I was confused. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, part of the reason why we're passing this bill is because we're waiting for information coming from the governor's task force and from the work group that we put together that's going to hear from JLARC. And so, but if you all would rather that this bill didn't pass today, we will oblige you and go home.
No.
That's the way it's been made to sound. So is that the consensus of everybody that you all want this bill to go away? No. Well, then we're going to wait for the governor's task force to report back to us and also for the work group through JLOC to report back to us. That's how we're going to receive the information that helps us to know how we go forward with this being sustainable. Because with the popularity of this bill, of the popularity of this program, if people from outside of the Commonwealth continue to come in and enroll in the program and the costs keep escalating, we've got to find some way to fund it or we've got to do something. So, I mean, it's not like, and maybe I'm going on too much, maybe we want to go and pass this bill. Okay, you've got, I think, how many minutes left? About 1 minute, 51 seconds left between the two of you, I'm sorry.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Mitch Rubenstein. I am the State Commander of the Veterans of Foreign Wars Department of Virginia. The VFW has 126 posts and over 36,000 members and auxiliary members in every region of the Commonwealth of Virginia. I am a retired veteran of the United States Army and Army Reserves, as well as a retired police officer. I appear before you to urge the General Assembly to vote today to fully restore the Virginia Military Survivors Independence Program. This program is a promise Virginia made to the military personnel that lost or risked their lives and their families who were left behind. The Commonwealth should keep its promises to our military and first responders. Hopefully, today will end over 2 months of uncertainty and anxiety endured by the families of our fallen and disabled military personnel and first responders. I understand that some legislators believe changes need to be made to ensure that the long-term viability of this program. We ask that all discussions take place in a respectful and open, transparent way, that any changes not be snuck in a bill in the middle of the night when nobody is looking. Please work with the VSOs and first responders. As the VFW State Commander, I want to thank the leadership of this committee and the leadership of both the House and Senate for your work to restore this important program. I also want to thank the families of our fallen and disabled brothers and sisters that are here today and have worked so hard over the past few months to restore the Virginia Military Survivors Independence Program. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
All right. I'm from the other side, so I think we have the 5 minutes there. Thank you in advance for restoring VMSTEP and providing funding for the program. We have been told throughout the process and across the spectrum that the cost of VMSTEP is passed on to tuition-paying students. For example, Virginia Commonwealth University President Michael Rao said in a statement that VMSTEP remains as an unfunded mandate experiencing unanticipated expansion, which means that the cost falls onto other students who pay tuition. And at VCU, this includes the majority who have high financial need. Tony Maggio briefed the House Appropriations Committee in May that waivers are foregone revenues and that are absorbed by other students in the form of higher tuition and fee charges. Senator Serval stated in a June letter to his constituents that VMSTEP families are receiving free tuition being funded by other Virginia students. Tuition and fees for next year were already set a long time ago prior to any additional funding being approved for the VMSTEP program. As such, next year's tuition and fees are already factored in to the absorbed cost of the VMSTEP program. Thus, the money appropriated for VMSTEP should be returned as rebates to tuition and fee-paying students. If such rebates are not made, then we will know for certain that the cry that VMSTEP costs are passed on to tuition-paying students was simply a ruse. It was a ruse using Gold Star, line of duty death, and disabled veteran families as pawns by schools and government officials to increase school budgets for other projects. Any attempt in the future to blame VMSTEP for increasing tuition costs will ring hollow. Please ensure that VMSTEP appropriated funds are rebated to tuition-paying students and are not redirected to other pet projects of colleges and universities. We will certainly be following the money, and we hope you will do the same. Thank you.
None of this was done under the cloak of darkness or this bill, this entire measure was introduced in the governor's office. So let's start with that. This is the governor's bill, introduced by Senator Reeves, not our bill, the governor's bill. So it was not put in our budget under cloak of darkness. We just agreed with what the governor's office introduced. I just want to be real clear about that while we're talking about under cloak of darkness. I just cannot sit here and let that go by another minute. Any other member of the committee have any statements they want to make?
We have a motion.
I think Senator Favola wanted to speak before the motion.
Briefly, Madam Chair. Thank you. I just want to note that there will be many perspectives brought to the table that the select work group will have the privilege of listening to. But one of the very important voices will be coming from not just our college recipients and our scholarship recipients from the VMSDE program, but also from the colleges and universities. And I will just say now, for the analysts who are gearing up to help support the various study groups, we need to look at the university funding in a granular fashion, because there are wide ranges of attendees at certain colleges and universities, and then other colleges and universities don't have many VMSDE students. And there, to my knowledge, we don't have a clear indication of how money should flow to the universities, what criteria should we be asking for, and what should the expectation be. And I would think that those are policy questions we could all come to agreement on. So I just want to put that out on the table, because it might take some work, but I think it's going to be critical to the future funding of this program and to ensure its viability going forward, and so everybody understands the rules of the game. So I want to thank you, Madam Chair, for taking leadership on this, for understanding that this was a bigger issue than what had originally appeared from Governor Youngkin in the budget, and for also understanding that certain steps had to be taken so we could get to a good public policy place. With that, I am going to support the motion to report the bill.
Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I just wanted to respond a little bit. You know, I stood on the Senate floor, I've sent emails to my constituents, and I acknowledged that I at least made a mistake. And I learned when I was a little boy that when you make a mistake, you fix it. And I think that's what we're doing today. We are fixing this for the interim. Now, talk about the budget, talk about the governor. I didn't know the governor introduced it, and maybe I missed that, or Senator Reeves, and he's not here. But clearly we did this in the budget, and quite a few of us didn't really understand the implications. So we made a mistake, and we're trying to fix it today, but that was a mistaken process. And everybody in this room recognizes that it is such a popular program and it costs so much money, we're going to have a discussion in order to be able to continue its viability. And I think that that is a real discussion that has to be had, but it has to be had with you all in the room. And so that's what I pledged to do, and I think that's what most of the people, if not everybody at this dais, has pledged to do, is to fix it and then have these discussions going forward, and you all have a say in that. And I really don't know what else we can do. And so I hear you, and I understand your frustration, but we are doing the best we can do to fix this and involve you in the process going forward. And you may not like what happens going forward. I get that, but you'll be a part of it. That's what I've pledged to do, and that's what I'm committed to, and I think everybody else up here is. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Stewart. Any other member of the committee have a question? There's a motion on the floor, so is there any unreadiness before we carry the motion? Madam Clerk, why don't we just open a roll?
Ayes 12, no 0.
Ayes 12, no 0. Senate Bill 6 012, passed. And if there is no other business to
Madam
come
Chair.
before. Senator
I had a
Serval.
quick question. I know that there's been some discussion about the skill game situation. Is there a plan on that between now and the end of the year?
Senator Serval, I talked to the leadership in the House of Delegates, and I understand that they are not ready to deal with skill games yet. I understand that they are hopefully preparing themselves to bring the bill back in a special session in October. That's as much information as I have right now, but there was no way we could bring it back today when the House is not ready to deal with it.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is there any other business to come before the committee? Then we are adjourned.